Howdy peeps, hope everyone's doing well. So this video is going to be my second take on trying to cover this one. Basically it's NPD, BPD, know the difference. And I suppose it's kind of a bit of a video response, as it were, to another comment that was left on my video, codependency and narcissism combined roles in people. Now the other comment that was left, and I'm going to be a bit honest with this, and I'm not sure if it's someone trying to troll me, trying to be clever, because they've got a bit of anonymity and everything on the internet, you know, or well, on YouTube at least. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of read out the comment that was left, and I'm just going to kind of go through it, and then I'm going to explain the differences between someone that has narcissistic personality disorder and someone with borderline personality disorder. What tends to happen in those scenarios is a lot of people on the internet, for that matter, do tend to throw everyone, like, from within the cluster B spectrum. They'll throw them all into the narcissistic category, although technically speaking that's not strictly true, but it's just something that does kind of tend to happen. So now this comment is from My Smiling Black Heart. So yeah, okay then. Being qualified in these matters, what, with a name like that? Yeah, alright then. I think you're either qualified in trolling or bullshit, but whatever. I stumbled upon this video. Yeah, a channel that's shadow banned by YouTube because of the different topics I've covered over the years, and you just so happen to stumble across this video. Yeah, I think you're not being honest with me there, but whatever. And although you speak with such conviction, it is clear you have unresolved issues about things in your own life. Really? Is that really what you think, or is that what you're projecting out onto me? Because I can be straight up, I haven't got any issues in my life at all. Resolved or unresolved, I'm all good, but thanks for your concern. People will listen to this and actually heed any advice you are giving. Right, now this is how I know you're not qualified in these matters, right? I mean, I'll go from the top, right? Anyone that has a PhD in clinical psychology isn't going to go running around on YouTube calling themselves My Smiling Black Heart and then making a typo like that. Like, actually heed any advice you are giving. Now, I think much to the kind of opposite. I think a lot of clinical psychologists would probably advise against getting involved with someone that has narcissistic personality disorder. But, you know, if you want to advise people to do the opposite, yeah, you're not going to last very long in that one. Yeah, you're going to have a lot to answer for in a very short amount of time. Anyway, let's carry on with your comics. It's quite entertaining. It sounds like you've had a broken heart or a difficult time. This is what I love about the internet. Why do people always use that one? You know, you say something, you bring up some home truths, and then they go all passive aggressive, and then they tell you that you're going through heartache, or you've had some problems, or this, that, and the third, and it's like, no, these are just facts of life. You know, it is what it is. I'm perfectly fine. Like I said, I'm perfectly fine, but thanks for your input, right? Very quick to point out your blame through your seemingly innocent opinions and your own need for codependency. Blame for what? Exactly. And, you know, seemingly innocent opinions. They're not seemingly innocent opinions. These are facts, right? And I know that facts have this real bad habit of hurting people's feelings, especially if it applies to a certain individual. Just saying, you know, then, you know, all you're doing is projecting your own insecurities onto me. You know, this is what people tend to do. Either that, or you're just, you know, you're trying to troll me and you're just doing a bit of shit posting. So it's one of the two, right? And as for my own need for codependency, no, I don't have a need for codependency. You know, like where do you get this assumption? I mean, do you just listen to a video of mine and then all of a sudden you think you know everything about me? It's like, really? Is that how your world works, is it? It must be a real dark place, man. You must get a lot of things wrong. Must suck. Anyway, it just might be worth looking at the real issues inside of you, and you've missed another word out, by the way. But I'll put it in there for you. Rather than spouting occasional sexist and derogatory remarks to the whole world about their issues, perhaps. So I'm assuming that you're a bit of a Marilyn Monroe fan, and you're a little bit offended for some reason that your little idol, sorry, personal joke. Yeah, idolizing. Do you get it? Yeah, NPD, idolization, putting them up on a pedestal. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm sure you get it. Anyway, you know, like, what was even what did I even say that was sexist or derogatory for that matter? You know. And then you're concerned that someone is talking about Marilyn Monroe on the internet. I mean, Jesus Christ, how do you sleep at night? But anyway, look, that's that. You've obviously got some issues that you need to work on. I'm perfectly fine. Thank you for your concern. I'm good. Life is peachy and all that, right? I suggest you maybe go and see someone about whatever your problem is. You know, whether it's random shit posting on the internet and might have become a bit of an addiction for you, because you get away with it because, after all, anonymity plus internet connection equals total fucktard, which is you, basically. But anyway, moving on, since I've now dedicated about 7.5 minutes to this clown, I want to talk a bit about the differences between NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and borderline personality disorder. So, narcissistic people, the simplest form I can put it in is they literally coerce and manipulate their, air quotes, target. Now, it's interesting the way they sort of pick their targets, because they do test people before getting involved with them, and it might not just be a case of a romantic relationship. It can be friendships as well. Oftentimes people with NPD are likely to only have friends that's air quote friends, people that they can use to their advantage at some point, rather than it actually being a genuine friendship. You see, with these people, a lot of the time when someone else relies on them on something, a lot of the time that person with NPD will actually let them down. This can be done in many different ways. Sometimes they've even been known as go as far as supposedly being friends with someone and then cheated on that friend with their partner, right? And these are the kind of wonderful characters you're kind of dealing with here. But again, there's no consciousness about it. There's no integrity. There's no morality. Generally speaking, a lot of the time, and again, it's on a spectrum, so some people will be, air quotes, more narcissistic than others. Now, with borderline personality disorder, now that is a kind of a different kettle of fish. And although I've been speaking mostly about codependents and narcissists, I hadn't really thought a great deal about the potential of a borderline and a narcissist in a relationship, if that's what you'd want to call it. I think that would definitely be called a relationship, but that's just my opinion on that one. Anywho, with regard to borderline personality disordered individuals, now a lot of the time with borderlines, I think the majority, I think, are going to be women. That's just my personal opinion on that one. But that's not to say that borderline men aren't a thing either, because they are, obviously. But it's I don't know, it's a bit of a grey area. You know, it's very difficult to get people to admit, if they are NPD, to admit to that sort of a thing. There's, like I've said previously, there's only one that I know that is quite open and, you know, quite flaunts it, I suppose, owns it, as it were. But generally speaking, that is the kind of nature of it. And there is differences between a narcissist and a malignant narcissist, and that's just going down a whole different path, which I don't want to do in this video because it will take far too long. Now, regarding borderlines, now they tend to be somewhat more emotional in the sense that they have you could argue for the potential for almost kind of like codependent in a way, but not quite. In the sense that a codependent is more likely to fight to stay within a relationship. I don't mean necessarily physically fight. I mean they will not really want to leave the relationship or not want the other person to leave them. Whereas someone with borderline personality disorder, on the other hand, is probably, it's a perceived abandonment. So even though the other person may not, and again, not necessarily just romantic relationships, this affects friendships and working life as well. So they may actually perceive that something might actually trigger them to think that the other person is going to abandon them and leave them. Now, the reaction that they may have from that is they can go all out and then practically push the other person away. And it's the strangest thing, because for the borderline, because as much as they are pushing the other person away, at the same time they're trying to draw them in at the same time. So it's a bit of it's a lot of a conflict that they've got going on, because they don't want to be alone. They want to be with the person that they're involved with at that moment, whether it's a friend, partner, whatever. Whilst at the same time, the sort of darker side of that is that they're just trying to push them away, because they've got these kind of I suppose they are feelings of abandonment and a preconceived sense, I suppose, which makes me think all sorts of other things as well. But now by that I mean, because some of the times the way people with borderline personality react can be somewhat similar to those of bipolar, which is a different spectrum altogether. It's a different thing. Just ever so briefly, people with bipolar disorder, they tend to go on these phases, and they can last for weeks at a time, whereas with the borderline it can be several hours or a couple of days. But generally they will sort of put themselves back together eventually. Also a sense of what's the sort of term? Oftentimes it will be sort of like they've got it in their head that the world is against them in some way, or maybe that they don't fit in, and so as a result that they think that the world is against them. Obviously it's not necessarily the case, but this can make things somewhat difficult for friends and well, I suppose romantic partners as well. Now, on this kind of a thing, that sort of one of the things that made me want to talk about this video wasn't necessarily the comment that was left by that other individual, but it was more to do with something I saw a little while ago, and that was someone that was on a dating app, and they were actually quite open and honest about having borderline personality disorder, which is, in my opinion, I think it's a very good idea. It's a good thing, because it, at least in terms of being in a relationship, the other person can be prepared for what could potentially come, rather than, you know, all of a sudden they just sort of flip out, they go on a bad one sort of thing, and then that leaves the other person wondering, like, what the hell's, you know, what's going on. So I suppose in that aspect, fair play to that young lady who is actually quite open and honest about it. And I think that's the best way to be, in my opinion, with you know, anything like that. I mean, obviously people with narcissistic personality disorder, they're not quite as blasé about it. They'll just display high, what's the word? Just a big ego, basically, you know, high in extroversion, that kind of a thing. And that's not to say that extroverts are all narcissistic, by the way. It's just using it as an example. They are quite outgoing, and you know, they do sort of make their presence known, should we say. You know, they're quite, in some aspects, they're quite ballsy about themselves. But again, deep down, that is actually more of a facade. Internally, they're actually quite weak individuals, but that's kind of neither here nor there. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there regarding people with borderline personality disorder, and I think sometimes people do confuse the differences in these disorders between NPD, BPD, and in some cases even bipolar. But obviously, if you know enough about them, then it is a case of you know, knowing the differences. Now, with that being said, sometimes even doctors and psychological clinicians can also misdiagnose between bipolar and borderline. Again, this is because the DSM, the Data Statistics Manual for Psychological Disorders, as written by the American Psychological Association, is constantly being updated, and they're reclassifying things on sort of like a day, well, not a daily basis, but it happens quite regularly. So, I mean, generally speaking, the personality disorders are what they are, and the traits of which are usually quite well representative. But as I've said previously, it's all on a scale. So some individuals might not quite react in the same way as others, but kind of is what it is. Anywho, I just wanted to do this video. This has turned out a bit shorter, which I think is a good thing. A bit shorter than the other one. But yeah, it's knowing the difference between narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and obviously I've thrown bipolar in there as well, but it's not actually related. Might have a few similarities, but it's more of a mania thing with bipolar. But maybe I'll cover that topic another time, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, thanks all for listening. I hope you found this useful in some way, shape or form. And until the next one, stay cool, stay free, and peace out.